Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Monday again. So excited to see you all. It's Monday, 7 o'clock here in Phoenix, Arizona, for those of you who are joining in. And welcome, welcome, welcome. For those of you that are new, I'm Alicia Sweezer, owner of Who Knew Healing. And the reason we get together every Monday night is for Insights with Alicia. I was led by the universe to start sharing some things that I teach my clients, insights that I get that help myself or the people around me. And for those of you who don't know, I'm an intuitive life coach, mentor, animal consultant, psychic medium, and I absolutely love being able to be of service and help people and animals. So thank you so, so much for joining in. It is wonderful to have you all. And hopefully you've got your favorite drink tonight. I've got my iced tea as usual because I do a lot of talking. And, it's Monday, so hopefully you got something super yummy. All right, what are we going to talk about tonight? Oh, and for those of you who tune in on Facebook, I am not able to see your comments. So if you would like to have comments, please use the Zoom link, pop in here, and then I will be able to see those. So thank you all for watching. All right, so tonight, we are going to finish our chat about the entitled why, right? We started last week. There's lots of steps in this. I didn't fit it all into one 30-minute session. Like I said, there's a lot to this. It could actually be a class. It's just amazing to me how much this shows up, and not even like all 5 steps of this showing up. Even earlier today with a friend, and even earlier this morning with a client, we were talking about the difference between explaining and defending, right? What we talked about last week. And with my friend, I was helping her see where, less is more. It was like this person that she was going to have this discussion with isn't in a circle, isn't, she's not quite sure where this person fits in her life yet. And so to share a bunch of vulnerable personal information might not be in alignment or of service to her in that moment. But because we have such big hearts and we always come from this place of, communicating to connect with someone, it's challenging sometimes for those of us who are made that way to discern, and that's what we're talking about with this entitled why. It's like, that's why there's the 5 steps to this. So if you haven't watched last week's video or even read last week's blog, because it's both, I absolutely recommend that you do that. So 1, you'll understand more of what we're talking about tonight, as well as you'll get the full education around this concept. So you can find part 1 on YouTube under Alicia Sweezer, where all of these fabulous videos and podcasts are. And okay, let's get started. This is such good stuff. Like I said, I love that it we were having this conversation earlier. And so last week, we talked about the first 2 steps of the process to shift this situation. The first step is recognizing, right, what the entitled why is. Now you all have that awareness. You can't unsee it. You can't unhear it. And so recognizing when it pops up in a communication, in a conversation. The second step of the process is to understand the difference between explaining and defending. And we went into detail about that last week, about how it feels. Remember, how do you know, always comes back to that feeling. So tonight we're going to start with the 3rd step in this process. And the 3rd step is to recognize. So it's all about self-awareness and what was the other word I had? I can't remember now. It's all about self-awareness. It was a synonym for self-awareness that I also had. So it's about being self-aware and recognizing when we are being triggered into our old behaviors. So that could be your people pleasing, your need to prove. And so if we're wanting to explain or defend ourselves, this is step 3. It's being very self-aware and recognizing when those triggers start happening. And if you're starting to slip into, like I said, the defending, then you're most likely are being triggered. So if you're finding yourself doing that, it's old patterns. So the step 3 starts to look like questions to ask yourself. Are you attached to what this person thinks of you? Are you attached to them liking you or getting their approval? Are you putting their opinion of you above your own? Right? It's always that place of where we get attached and we want these people to like us. And so it spirals us into the defending, right? Like I talked about last week, where we just start saying all of the things. We start telling all of our stories about why we are the way we are, and in hopes that they'll understand or they'll get it, and they'll stop asking us all of these entitled invasive questions that aren't theirs to know. And so this is really, really our part in the behavioral pattern, right? Because there's always two parts to when this stuff happens. It's like there's the part someone else is doing, and there's our part in it. Where are we creating it? Where are we contributing to it? Where's our freedom in it, right? We can't change other people, no matter how hard we try. Not that I would know anything about that, but the only thing we can change is ourselves. So our part in this behavioral pattern is this awareness of, ooh, I'm getting triggered. I'm paying attention to the feeling. I'm wanting to defend. I'm wanting to overshare. I really care what this person thinks of me. I'm getting small. I want to say the right thing so that I'll get their approval, or they'll continue to like me. So that awareness is what's going to guide you to making different choices, which is step 4, right? So step 4 is all about making different choices in these situations, right? So now we're at step 4 out of 5. So first one, recognizing the entitled why. Second one, understanding the difference between explaining and defending. Third step is being self-aware of when we're getting triggered into past behaviors, when we're getting triggered by the entitled why, when we're getting triggered into starting to do the dance with this person. So as I said, the 4th step in this process is to make different choices, because there's so many times in this that we don't even realize that we have choices, right? I mean, last week when I first started this, I talked about that we don't always have to, fixing all my little buttons here now, because it only works when there's more than one person on my Zoom. All right, apologize for the technical. So as I was saying last week, I started with, we don't have to answer a question just because someone asked it. And that even came up today with someone that I was talking to. I was like, they asked you that, they said that, you don't have to answer. And she was like, what? And I said, yeah, you don't have to answer just because someone asks. And like I said, it's not about like cutting people out and that sort of thing. It's about, if it's a question you're uncomfortable with, you don't have to answer it. You don't have to answer it in that moment. You don't ever have to answer it. Now, yes, there are certain situations, if you have a boss, but there's safety things, there's HR. We're not going to get into all of that. We're just talking about this concept in general here. So it's this place of making different choices. You get to choose. And we get to make choices at the beginning of this process. Because like I said, now you know what the entitled why is. Every time you see it, it's going to pop up and you go, oh, this is what it is. Now you may not remember all 5 steps, right? You're out, you're with your friend, like you're in a public thing. You may not go, oh God, what did she say in that YouTube video? On the podcast, what were the 5 steps? This is all a process. It takes practice. So there's no place in here to be beating yourself up or judging. Just even recognizing that it's happening, that awareness will change things. And you may get through all 5 steps and shift it in that moment, or you may get halfway through and be like, oh, wait, now I'm recognizing it, right? There's no place in here where we're trying to do all of this perfectly. So with the 4th step being about making different choices, right? Because the choices we have been making have been to overshare, have been to explain, have been to make ourselves small, have been to defend, have been to get upset, have been to buy into their story about us. So you get to make a choice at the beginning. If you recognize the entitled why, you go, oh, okay, I'm going to choose to not do the dance at all. I'm going to not do it at all. And that's great if you recognize it. Sometimes you're halfway through. Like I said, there's been lots of times where I have been in a conversation communicating with someone, and I think, I'm like, oh, great. I'm telling them about myself and I'm explaining, and I think we're in a connection place. And then all of a sudden I'm like, this doesn't feel good. I was like, oh, this is not what I thought it was. So in that moment, we get to make a choice also. We don't have to continue down the rabbit hole. We don't have to continue down the slide. And it's a little tricky when you're new at it, because you're like, oh, right. Because we have all these beliefs of like, oh, I don't want to seem rude and I don't want to be mean. And because we're still attached to what that person thinks of us, right? That's step 3. So it's this place of even having that awareness where you're like, oh, this doesn't feel good. I don't want to, this isn't working for me. I don't want to do it anymore. So then you get to choose there. And we're going to get to the 5th step is where you'll have language and all of that kind of thing. Because if you remember, that's the 5th step. So this 4th step is just starting to make different choices. And if you make it if you go all the way down the rabbit hole and you're with this person in the conversation, you go, okay, well, I recognized what I did there. So the next time it happens, most likely you'll choose differently. So there's this human part of us, and I used to have this, oh, it was so strong in me, and it still kicks in once in a while, but it used to be so strong because loyalty is such a big deal to me, right? I'm a very loyal person, and that can really, when your loyalty is dysfunctional and wrapped in caretaking and people pleasing and all the other stuff you guys have heard me talk about, it's not really loyalty. It's really unhealthy. So I used to think that once I made a choice, that was it. Like, you're not allowed to change your mind. You told someone you were going to do something, or you said something, or it doesn't, like, we get to grow and change. But I used to have this place where it was like, no, I said this, or I did this. I don't ever get to choose again. Like, I've got a commitment was such a big deal. I've got to wait until it's done. And then maybe next time in a different situation, I can choose. But I was so under the dysfunctional perspective of loyalty and commitment and that sort of thing that it was a detriment to myself. So just know that any step along this, we get to make different choices. Even if you've said something, we get to choose again. And there's freedom in that. Now, right, we don't want to, the goal isn't to swing all the way to the other side of the pendulum, and not have any sense of what's in alignment for us as far as commitment and that sort of thing. Because if you're quote unquote flaky, right, there's going to be consequences to those choices as well. So wherever is the balance for you in this, and it's different for every person, that is where you want to be looking for, where you're aligned. So we get to make different choices, whether it's at the beginning, halfway through, at the end. It's all about the freedom for yourself. So when, oh, look, I just talked about this whole part. Usually I have my notes that I refer to, and I'm like, oh, that's where I was. And I did that one all just in the conversation here, because I talk about this entitled why a lot. I do it with my clients and my friends because it's everywhere, particularly, like I said at the beginning, that explaining and the defending, it just comes up so much. Okay, so first step, recognizing the entitled why. Second step, understanding the difference between defending and explaining. Third step is recognizing when you're getting triggered and being self-aware of what is happening. Fourth step, the ability to make different choices. And the 5th step is now communicating in a conscious and confident manner. And I get this can be really uncomfortable, especially in the beginning, especially if you've been a people pleaser, especially if you've been the quote unquote nice person. Because when those of us who haven't used our voice for a long time, when we start to use our voice and be direct and just conscious in our communication, we can sometimes feel or think that it's rude, that it's mean, that we're doing something wrong, and all those other judgments that we pile on top of that, because you're just not used to, one, being empowered, and also communicating that empowered stance for yourself. And so it's not rude, it's not mean, it's actually healthy and functional. Now, of course, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, it really comes down to how you are communicating, right? A big fan and of the conscious communication, right? I'm always talking about the energy of our communicating, the delivery. So what the communication starts to look like now is if someone says, hey, can you come to my party? And now you'll say, hey, thanks for the invite, I'm not available. Here's the thing. I do not care if you are going to sit on your couch and binge watch Netflix all day. You are not available. If you don't want to go to this party, you don't have to. We always, because we're such doers in our society, we think we have to be doing something, quote unquote, productive to be worthy of not going to an event that we don't want to go to. Not available means not available. You could be sleeping. You could be hanging out with friends. It doesn't matter because we're not measuring anymore, right? You're simply not available. Complete sentence. And this can be so hard for us because, as I said, as doers, we think, oh, I could go to the party. I could do it. I could force myself to do it, right? And those of us that, we're not quitters and all of those mindsets we buy into, it's like, I could do it. I could suck it up, right? Suck it up and put your big girl panties on and go to the party. Yeah, we can physically do it. But if we don't want to, we don't have to anymore. And we just weren't told that part. So you don't have to. You are not available. So I want you to practice saying that, like for a couple of days, every day in the mirror, be like, I am not available, and just grow that muscle. It's like when we start exercising, you got to start with the 1 pound weight. And it's like, we're just not available. End of sentence. And it's about being in integrity with yourself, because guess what? If you go to an event or a party or do something for someone that you don't want to do, it's going to drain you. It's the stuff I talked about last week. It's going to drain you. You're going to judge yourself. You're going to be resentful towards yourself. You're going to be resentful towards the other person. And right, because you're trading, you're doing something you don't want to do. You're suffering, you're sacrificing. That all has to do with you. It has nothing to do with that other person, because you're the one making those choices. And sometimes we slip into it and it just feels terrible. Like that's why we do this stuff, is because we want to feel better. So, hold on, someone wrote in the chat here. I want to read this. So the comment in here is something someone said once that helped me, was that people don't ask us why when we say we will do something. Oh, so very true. Carrie is very, very wise, right? When we say, yes, okay, I'll come to your party, nobody ever asks us why. When we give them what they are wanting, when we say answer in the affirmative, nobody questions us. Nobody says, oh, well, why are you coming? Because I want to gauge whether or not that's a good enough reason for you to come. But as she's saying here is like, why is no any different? Well, because they're not getting what they want, right? It's all it's sometimes we can be very selfish and we want what we want. And I love that. And it's so funny because it makes me think of at one point through my journey, and I think you guys I probably brought it up in one of these talks that we have on Monday night, is like when you're happy, right? When you're feeling happy, nobody ever goes, oh, we need to move you out of that emotion. We need to move you from being happy. But when you're sad or you're upset or you're angry, or basically when you're anything but happy, people want to move you out of that emotional state, right? They don't want you to be sad. They're like, oh no, we got to get you to happy, versus going, all right, what's happening? What's going on with the sadness? And really showing up for you in that way, because it makes them uncomfortable. I think we did like a whole Monday night about this. I forget which subject it was under, but I remember talking about that, where it, when people aren't in tune with their own emotions, when someone around them is in quote unquote an uncomfortable emotion, sadness, grief, anger, whatever, it doesn't feel good to them because they haven't looked at their own, they've stuffed it. So they're like, no, I can't have you around me because you just remind me that I have sadness inside that I'm not willing to look at. So they want everyone to be around them, everyone around them to be happy. They're like, we got to shift and change that. So I love this, Carrie, where it's like, yeah, nobody asks us why when we're giving them what they want. No one says, oh, you can come. Why? Oh, you can't come. Why? So love that take on it. Thank you so much for contributing and sharing that. All right. So it's just such good stuff. I love this stuff. Okay. So, right. Someone has invited you to the party. You say, thanks for the invite. And then you go, I'm not available. Now here's where the entitled why shows up. Why aren't you available? Doesn't matter why. I'm just going to keep saying that. You're going to hear me say it like 1,000 times. This is the place where, like we've talked about, people think they're entitled to an answer. They're not. You take a deep breath and you repeat, I am not available. The practice here is to just keep repeating the same sentence. And I know this is a concept that may be new to some of you. I know when I learned it, I was like, what? Because as people pleasers, as caregivers, we go into story, we go into the why. So for us, our personal boundary that we hold for ourselves and the choice that we get to make, step 4, is to just say what's true. I'm not available, and stop talking. Because anything beyond that is starting to dance with this person. Anything beyond I'm not available is going to give them some place to go. Oh, you said this, so now we start the dance. Now you gave this reason. Now here's my reason to counter that. You said this. Now how I'm going to, give you evidence of why that's wrong, and you need to do what I want you to do. So we just get to keep saying the same sentence, and eventually they'll run out of energy. They'll stop doing the dance. Does it mean that they might not have a tantrum before then? Some people do. So, I wanted to share this. Am I doing it here, or am I do it? I'll do it after. There's this meme that I wanted to share. So like I said, we just keep repeating the same sentence. And I know that it might feel awkward and weird in the beginning, because we don't normally do that in conversations. But this is a conversation that is going nowhere. This is a dead end conversation. So we are ending it. Right. So we're at the end of the road, right? It's dead end, not available, not available. Because if we give them any information, we've now offered them a left turn or a right turn at the end of the road. And now we keep going down. So when we just say the same thing, it gives them absolutely nothing to argue against. Very, very much the case of where less is more, kind of what I talked about a little bit earlier. And when we start defending is when we start using a ton of words, we start saying a bunch of things, because that's where we've gotten triggered and attached to their approval of us, right? Dysfunctional. It's not fun. Doesn't feel good. So not available. Put a little sticky in your bathroom mirror. So there's this meme that I saw on Facebook. It just totally cracked me up. It was one of those, like, here's the list of, it was like entitled people, right? So it was all these screenshots of text messages of where people were being entitled. And as I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what we were talking about. So I'm just going to read it because it's too hard to get to share on the screen here. So Michelle says, hey, any chance you can get Michael at work tonight? He gets out at 9. Tracy's like, sorry, I just got out of work. Tonight's my date night, so I don't know if I'll be home by 9. Michelle, really? You live with the guy. You can't be done by 9? So right? So right there is the example of the entitled why. And where could have Tracy chosen a little bit different in her language is just to say, sorry, not available. But the second she gave her a reason of it's my date night, now Michelle's got something to argue against, which she did. She was like, oh, you live with the guy. So like date night's not important when you live with them. All her opinion, all her judgment of the situation, because she's not getting what she wants. So Tracy could have just been like, not available. If that changes and I'm available by 9, I'll touch base with you. That's what it starts to look like. So I thought that was hysterical. I was like, that's literally what we're talking about. And it's a very good example is that when we give someone that why, and like I've talked about last week is before, this isn't our inner circle people, right? It's not the people that we hold close, not the people that are emotionally safe. These are our outer circle or acquaintances, or maybe even like outer family, kind of thing, to where they believe that they're entitled to this stuff. And this just was funny. So less is more. Tracy just says not available. If that changes and I'm available by 9, if she wants to help out, I'll let you know. Because like I said, the second she told her why, Michelle was on that, man. Michelle was like, no, it's not a good enough reason. You need to change. You need to do it differently. You need to give me what I want. So I thought it was fun. Okay. So this 5-step process that I've been talking about tonight, and I want to give you an example here of this last step about the communication, right? Of where less is more, not available. I did this whole shift technique with a client of mine with a family situation. He had a family member who we anticipated was going to be bringing up a previous dead end entitled why conversation at a holiday dinner. And this particular family member was extremely adept at manipulative language and conversation. That's code for narcissism. It's a really nice way to say it. So now my client didn't want to have this conversation again. Like, he has said what he needed to say and it was done. It was just going in circles. And he's like, I'm not doing this, right? We were really working on this process with him and doing his internal work around it and his need to prove and all this kind of stuff and the need to be right. And when you're dealing with someone with narcissism, you're never going to be right. It just doesn't work that way. So let me rephrase that. They're never going to see you as right. That doesn't mean you aren't correct in the situation, but the other person is never going to see you as right. So, like I said, my client didn't want to have this conversation, let alone at a family holiday dinner, right? In front of people. That's where a lot of this entitled why shows up, like we talked about, is in front of people. So we created some language for him, something along the lines of, you know what, I'm not going to discuss this again, or I'm not going to discuss this today. And his instruction was to keep repeating that sentence. No matter what this particular family member said, like, hey, let's go catch up, let's take a walk. You know what? I'm not in a place to discuss anything today. Or the family member's like, hey, we need to revisit what you said because I've got some ideas, or, you know, what was usually said in this is I need to correct you in the things that you said. Literally said that. And so his practice was to just keep saying, not going to discuss it today, not going to discuss it at all. Conversation's over. How's Thanksgiving? How was your morning? I get that can sometimes feel uncomfortable. And the person a lot of times will push back on it. They could start to have a tantrum, like I was saying, because they're not getting the hit of power to their ego. They're not getting what they want in that moment. And so I know it seems really simple in the language, right? It's very simple language and it's super, super powerful and it was super effective. So here's the other thing to pay attention to in this is it's not a place for us to be aggressive, because when we're in integrity with ourselves, there isn't a need to protect ourselves, right? There's so many times that when we're finding our voice or when we're feeling triggered, that we're like, we think we got to defend back. We got to come back with bigger energy. We've got to try and overpower the person. And the truth is, when you're in alignment with yourself, when you are perfectly okay with what's going on inside, when you're in integrity, there's no reason, there's no need to be loud, because you don't have to convince anyone else, right? Like we've talked about this a little bit, it's like, I don't need to convince you, this is what's true for me, I'm just going to say it. So that you don't have to be aggressive in it. You just be like, I'm not going to talk about it today. Feel how clean that is? Feel how much ease is in there? Because once again, all of this is energetic as well. So if there's no energy for that person to push against, it dissipates as well. They run out of steam. And here's the thing, for anyone that feeds on you getting upset, if you don't get upset in it, it also cuts their food source, right? It cuts their power, because people will sometimes feed on you getting upset over something. And if you're like, no, I'm just not going to talk about it today, pass the potatoes, there's nothing for them to do with that. They're like, oh crap, right? So they may try a little more and they may, try and do their manipulation. But if you're in a place of like, you know what, I know where I am in this, I am okay with the choices I've made and I am in integrity with myself. It's very simple. I'm not going to talk about it today. Not available. So clean in that. And it's so much ease in there. I know it may not feel like it, and especially if this concept is new to people. And but I promise you, it works. And it will start to shift and change things, and you will feel different. So, the calmer, the more collected we can be in these situations, it's for peace for ourselves. Like I was talking about the friend I was helping earlier today. That was one of the things I worked on her, helped her with at first. I was like, you feel all this energy in this. And I said, you want to go have a conversation with this person and all this is just going to pour out. And I was like, this is all your part, because you want to share your part, but there was also a little bit about, wanting to control and have this person be different, that is separate than this. We talked about that. I was like, but there's all this energy And I said, then that person's going to react to it, which we're not responsible for, but we're the part we're responsible for is our delivery. You know what I mean? Like it's our part that we put out in there. And so when we come out of all this, then the conversation doesn't go well. So one, we worked on, she processed a lot of the emotions and the energy around it. So the level came down, right? Because you always hear me saying, we don't want to have conversations, particularly really important conversations with important people in our lives when we're amped up emotionally or energetically, right? We want to process some of that out so that we can actually have a really conscious, contributing, generative conversation. And so because what was happening is she was wanting to defend. She was like, I'm going to call him and I'm going to tell him this whole long story about why I said what I did and da, 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 da. Now, is there anything wrong with that? No. Is it going to get her where she wants to go with this person? No. Does that mean that there isn't another time or place to maybe share that story? Yeah, it probably is. In the moment when you're really upset, it's not going to go the way that you think it's going to go. So it's that place of when she processed some stuff. Now, when she goes to talk to him today, all of that's not going to be there. She now feels okay and has worked on releasing her fear. So she's now in integrity and alignment with herself so that when she has this conversation, it's calmer. She doesn't go into defending. She doesn't go into sharing things that aren't going to serve her in that moment. Once again, less is more. So I'm hoping that is making sense. And like I said, people, they may start having tantrums when you do this because they are not getting their instant gratification that they want. And they're not getting their hit of power, particularly people if they're trying to do it in a manipulative kind of way. It's unfortunate because at that point, people believe that they're in control and they get to decide what you do. It's not true. So when you're in this place of the calm and the collected, and you've walked through the 5 steps and you're saying you're just really simple, but super powerful and effective communication, that's your life-changing moment. That right there is where things start to shift because you now recognize this whole process and you go, oh, I've seen so many times this has happened up in my life before. And I'm going to start to decrease this because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't get me what I want. Doesn't get me in the kind of conversations I want to have with people. So when you're in alignment, when you're in self-integrity, right? Because we're just saying what's true for us, it keeps you full. It affords you the opportunity to change your behavior and destroy a pattern. Your self-confidence grows. What we believe about ourselves grows and expands. We like ourselves more. We can be happier. And the truth is our outlook on life starts to shift and change. And so much more when we have this awareness in this process, because ultimately, right, we get to that place of being in integrity with ourselves and then just being, not doing the things and not doing because like defending is doing, just being Alicia, not available. Thanks for the invite. Because I am in integrity with myself. So also, for those of you who don't know, no is a complete sentence, right? We're never taught that. So if someone says something and the answer is no, you just say no. And oh man, people may get upset at that. That's on them because they're not getting what they want. No is a complete sentence. Same thing with the I'm not available. If someone keeps pushing, you just keep saying no. And that's it. No, nope, nope. Nope, 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 nope. We don't go into defending. We just keep saying no. Eventually they'll stop. Hopefully they'll get the message, and it'd be awesome if they get an awareness for themselves in that, because then their life could start to change. So we can only hope. So those are the 5 steps, right? Recognizing the entitled why, understanding the difference between defending and explaining, being self-aware and recognizing when we are getting triggered into old patterns and beliefs. 4, making different choices. And 5, communicating in a confident and conscious self-integrity way. Simpler, feels so good. Like I get so filled up when I even talk about this stuff. So now you know what the secretive entitled why is. And I wonder what these awarenesses will start to change for you. So I'm just so excited about it. I just love this stuff. So thank you so much for joining. That's all for this Monday night. I hope you have enjoyed yourself. I had a great time. As always, love seeing you all, love connecting. Join me again next Monday. I have no idea what we're going to talk about. We'll see what the universe guides me. Hopefully something soon. It was kind of nice. I'm not going to lie. I wrote all this one. I didn't have to write a whole bunch for today. It was like, oh, it's kind of a nice break when you write 2 of them at one time. So as always, this video will be uploaded to YouTube tonight under Alicia Sweezer. If there are people that you know that could benefit from it, please share it with them. Like, that's always my goal, is to be of service and shift and change this stuff for as many people as possible so they can have peace and happiness in their life. You like stuff like this, sign up for my blog, same kind of stuff that I teach. And just thank you to everyone who's donated to my cosmic tip jar. It allows me, one, to practice receiving as always, and continue to do these sorts of events. And if anything I talked about tonight, you read on my website, you read in the blog, you see on my Facebook, anything, anywhere where I am putting stuff out there makes you want something different in your life, makes you want to shift something, makes you want to have a different relationship, makes you want to have that particular feeling in your chest go away, you know which one I'm talking about, book a session. Because I promise you, it is possible to have change. There is a reason that I get on here every Monday night. There's a reason that I do this for a living, because it works. You guys know all the stuff that I teach you on here, I do. Why is there a 5-step process? Because I did this for most of my life and I finally figured out how to change it. So I created the 5 steps. This all comes from my own stuff and whatever the universe, decides to deliver. So the change is possible. And so call me, book a session. Let's see what we can create together. You guys have a fabulous week, and I will see you all again next Monday. All right. Bye-bye.